What's that? Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to this Public Works meeting. Anybody with a conflict of interest, please declare it at the proper time. Just let everybody know we're on live on YouTube. Our first delegation is Nelson with a presentation with our water master plan. Would you like to go ahead, Nelson, and present?
Perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you to Council for having me on to present today to you. So I'll maybe start off as an overview of why we're here today. So about 2 years ago, the Township retained Stantec to undertake an update to essentially a little bit of modeling work that we had done before we had built the system model for the water system, that is. And more importantly, to look at two key elements, which is an update of the water asset management plan. So that was looking at all the water assets within the township. And what I mean by that is your water mains, your valves, your hydrants, not including, of course, the law supply, as that's owned by the law system, of course. And then the second part was really looking at a 10-year capital plan. So building upon the results of the asset management, but also considering things such as growth so that we can make decisions as to how the township may need to allocate funding so that your water servicing is aligned with your projections for growth. So I'll start first with the asset management plan. I'm going to get a little bit adventurous here and try to share my screen. And please let me know once it comes up.
It's there.
Perfect. So what you're seeing here, and I'm actually just going to go back to my asset management plan. So here we go. What you're seeing here is actually the summary of the asset management inventory. So what we ended up doing is we took a look at a lot of the existing GIS data that the township had. We also looked at the modeling results, and then we did an additional review of two key items, which is the as-built drawing information that the township was able to provide, plus information on maintenance records. So this would be operations staff that, you know, at times have to do any sort of maintenance program on water mains or hydrants so that we can compare materials to what we thought it should be. The end result is essentially we're looking to update the previous asset management plan that was developed for the township, focusing only, of course, on the water assets. So what you see here on your screen, if you can see it, is a summary of all the water assets, and we call it, you know, water, because again, it's not just the water main. And you can see here, we broke out your urban settlement areas. So this is within Warwick and whatnot, or Watford, that is. And then of course your rural areas, because you do have a series of water mains more in the rural zones. We looked at your hydrants and of course, elements like your booster station, which is actually a project Stantec was involved with a few years ago. And we looked at the quantity and essentially what that asset costs. So we were able to calculate through information that we have from tenders and our experience doing projects like this to develop essentially a replacement cost. So this is forms a portion of your asset management inventory. And I know the township has a broader inventory that includes transportation and wastewater as well. The intent here is to make sure that the information that you have is as up to date as can be reasonably expected so that we can then use this to figure out where we need to plan capital costing. And that gets us into the 10-year plan as well. So what you see here in the bottom, and I will let you know that this number is higher than the number that was shown a few years ago, and there's a couple of factors for that. We found a few discrepancies in terms of the lengths that we were able to adjust. And the other element here, we accounted for the fact that, you know, these are generally buried assets. So, the cost also includes a portion of construction, including surface works to get down to them. So in general, what we've done here though is provide a very good baseline, we believe, for the township to include this in the overall asset management plan as part of your requirements, which is actually legislated by the province. So that was the first of the major deliverables that we provided to the township. If there's no questions, I will, and of course, I know we can open up to questions. I'll share the next key item. I'm going to go just to the top here. Hopefully you can still see my screen. So now that we had an updated asset management plan, we worked with the township to identify what we believe to be priority projects. And again, a lot of that came from the asset management plan, because now we had a sense of not just the lengths of the water mains and whatnot, but we had an idea of what the material was. And also a little bit of history about how the operators have dealt with water main breaks and whatnot. So compiling all that information and utilizing some modeling, and the modeling was done not just for existing conditions, but also for planned growth. We then started to look at priority projects that the township should consider within a 10-year time frame. Key elements for that. So key element number one was that projects were typically identified based on remaining life cycle. So for example, the township still has a series of cast iron water mains within your settlement areas. So with time, those water mains are expected to have more and more concerns as it relates to water main breaks, and also capacity restrictions, because they get buildups in the inner walls. Which reduces essentially capacity and ultimately pressure within the system. The other element that drove the identification of a 10-year plan was also whether we thought there was already system bottlenecks in place that we may need to address to allow planned development to move forward. So the end result of this report was that we then identified a table of upgrades, which I'll go through at the very end here. So a table of upgrades that are from a high priority to a medium and ultimately to a lower priority, which is generally aligned, as I mentioned, with the age of the infrastructure, but also to make sure that your asset is ready to go to ensure that the development can proceed to where we anticipate it's going to occur. So very much this built upon the asset management plan, but took it to that next level so that we also included a little bit of the anticipated growth, and that we could start to target our money towards doing the type of replacements we need to do. So that is a very brief overview of the two major reports that were submitted. I would also like to add that we also did a system model update for the township, which obviously was key to both of these studies, but was also intended to provide the township with a method of even identifying future growth if and when it occurs. So yeah, so a summary to council on these items.
Okay, thank you. Has anybody got any questions? Yes, Jackie?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, in your opinion, are we ready for the growth that is already on the books, like that's coming as far as water is concerned?
Yeah, I would say that generally speaking, when we were looking at the water system, and your system is very unique in the sense that you've got essentially a standpipe in town, and you've got this feed from the law system. Your hydraulic conditions are fairly set, and I found that actually with most of the water main, the key driver was a little bit more on the asset management. It's not to say that you're getting a lot of water main breaks. The township's actually done a very good job addressing problematic water mains over time, and in fact you have recent funding to address another area. So a lot of it was more fine-tuning. There wasn't anything that I would say was overly drastic that needed to be done, in particular to address some of the in-town development. So some of the development to the west of the settlement area, a little bit on the north side of Confederation. So that was generally good. When we start to reach out a little bit further on some of the planned growth, and I think one, for example, was the greenhouse development, There's a little bit more water main work that has to be done specifically for development like that because the amount of water that was pulled. But most of the other sort of residential growth plans were already dealt with well with your existing system. However, some improvements would be needed over time. So
You talked about the greenhouse. I thought they needed less water than they said they required at the start. I thought we were okay there. And the same with the car wash. We're okay for the car wash. Our line's big enough down there, is it not?
Yeah, so the car wash is a little bit closer to especially the loss system and also the majority of the settlement area system. So it has the advantages of having the storage a little bit closer, which is certainly beneficial, and some of the larger water mains in the area, which reduces the losses due to friction. And when it comes to the greenhouse, I'd just like to note that it was represented in phasing of the greenhouse development, and certainly in the initial phases, the demands were lower. However, in some of the future potential phases, where some of the peak demands were getting on the higher end, that's where we'd want to have certain infrastructure in place. So it wasn't necessarily a day one issue, but something that would need to be planned and with that development, so that as they start to expand on phasing, that the infrastructure is ready to support that demand.
Okay, thank you. Are there
Just, I don't hear you, Jerry. That's all.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
You just cut out again. I'm not sure what's going on.
All right, I'm sorry. You did discuss the asset management plan a little bit here. Is there any more you want to talk about it?
In terms of the asset management plan? Yeah, I would say that in general, I mean, a lot of the findings from the asset management plan roll into the 10-year. I would say that the biggest item I would note was just that there does appear, so if you were to compare the asset management plan now to the one that was done about 4 years ago, there would appear to be, I want to say in the order of close to $20 million variance in the asset management value, but a lot of it's how we represented the cost. And what I mean by that is we wanted to make sure that we had what we believe to be a truer cost of replacement value. So it's not always just the material. It's, we know material is only a portion of total capital costs. There's the labor and the installation element. So we tried to represent that a little bit more, understanding that that was going to be a core element of the 10-year capital plan. So making sure that those costs carried forward so that when we're providing an estimate in the 10-year plan as to, let's say, a stretch of water main along the road, we're already representing the fact that you can't get to the water main without disturbing the surface. So to some degree, the surface values have to be incorporated. So that was the key. The variance on the quantities was relatively minor, and so we adjusted those. And what I mean is, a slight difference on water main lengths. We did find a few discrepancies on diameters, and certainly some discrepancies on materials. Most of the materials to some degree were favorable. There was materials previously identified as cast iron that had since been converted to PVC, which has a much longer life cycle, certainly remaining life cycle. So that was generally on the good side. But I would say for anyone comparing our document to the past, the biggest difference would be that value, but we believe that's a more representative value.
Yes, Mayor.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I've been talked to different people at different conferences, and they've shown me different ways of coating the cast iron pipes or lining them instead of replacing them completely. What is your opinion on that process, and is there a big cost savings for that?
Certainly, there are options to do lining. I mean, we're very familiar with that as well. And in some areas, especially when you look at highly urbanized areas where it's hard to do anything in the road without disturbing other utilities and services, that's certainly an option. My only caution on that element is that in some cases, the water main diameters are already a little bit on the smaller side. So there's sometimes a conflict with doing that if you also want to service development. So the liners are great because they provide that coating. They, to some degree, can improve friction factors in the pipeline, which is good, but you still get a reduced cross-section of pipe. And reduced cross-section of pipe means that you're inevitably still going to have potential longer-term pressure issues. So liners are great when the pipes are, 8-inch, maybe 10-inch, but when you start to get into the case here where we have a lot of 6-inch water mains that are cast iron, even the occasional 4-inch, lining may not give you the capacity that you want.
Thank you. I think there is some spots here where we say we still have cast iron, and I thought every place we replaced our streets or fixed our streets, except maybe Front Street, were changed. Maybe not.
No, there's definitely a few streets left that are still in cast iron.
But if we put a new road in, they were changed though. Any place where there was a new road in, like Front Street, that was new before quite a few years ago. But is that still cast like it says? I thought.
No, those would be PVC, and any streets we've done in the last. Maybe Nelson help me out here, but at least since the 90s, any new road reconstruction had a replacement of PVC.
That's correct. And that was shown in the information as well.
Okay, that's what I thought. We put it all and changed it. Okay, I guess we need a motion. Yes, Councilor Morris.
What is the difference between ductile iron and cast iron?
It's essentially a different material itself. They're not actually the same sort of actual material. Cast iron tends to be a little bit more fragile than ductile. Cast iron was a lot more prevalent as older material. Ductile, we still see ductile actually in chambers. Even when we do new water mains and we have chambers, quite often we have ductile on the inside. So they're a slightly different vintage. They tend to be about the 1940s, 1950s. Cast, you start to get a little bit earlier than that. So in fact, a lot of the cast iron here is obviously still original to settlement. And it is just overall a more fragile pipe. If you imagine cast iron furniture and items like that, if you drop it, it basically breaks. Ductile is a little bit more resilient.
Well, it says it's on Bond Street, and I thought we just redid that.
We did a surface coat.
Oh, that was it. We didn't do the, okay. Thank you.
Well, the ductile's a lot better than the cast.
That is not.
Okay. Well, thank you. We need a motion to accept Councilor Morris, Mayor Roundabouts. All in favor? Thank you. Well, thank you, Nelson.
Thank you very much, and thanks for accommodating me today.
We go on to further business. The Yellowfish Road. Are you going to speak to that?
Yeah, I can briefly just kind of give an overview. So this is a great program. Essentially just brings kind of awareness to the community about how important it is for, keeping our storm system safe and, just bringing the education that you shouldn't be dumping things down it. So this program will bring that to the community. So with the approval of council, give them the ability to bring this here at no cost to the township.
So we need a motion to grant approval for them to do this. Mayor Roundabouts, Councillor Morris. All in favor? Okay, the next is Front Street Parking Lot Restoration Tender Award.
Yep. So just the highlights of this one, there were two bids submitted. The lowest being Different Construction, just slightly over budget, and so that is the recommendation to go with Different Construction.
When do they expect to do this project?
I believe it can happen almost immediately after the contracts are signed, and they have till I believe it's mid-September to have it finished. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Morales.
Can you outline exactly what we can expect from that? Is it the lighting, or is it just outline that for us?
Sure. Yep. So they will be regrading. So they'll be stripping the existing soil because it's a mix of gravel and topsoil and grass. So they'll be stripping the first couple inches, regrading, putting down some gravel. There'll be improvement. They'll be removing the existing lights and installing new lighting, and of course regraded. So that's the extent of the work for the parking lot.
Andrew, we must have enough gravel there underneath big gravel then, do we?
Enough gravel that we don't need B gravel.
Right.
They don't anticipate that there's going to be any B gravel required for the purpose.
So we have dug test holes and we know.
They did dig some, yes, they did dig some test holes. We had the back hole out there a few weeks ago.
And it seems to hold up okay, except for the grass and stuff on top. So I just didn't want to waste a bunch of good A gravel on top of B if it's going to disappear and rut. And
yep. No, I don't think there's any reason to believe that it'll be any in poor condition, because it, like you said, it has held up for many years. So I think they're fairly confident with it. Just a few inches of A gravel, it'll serve its purpose.
Okay, thank you. I guess we need a motion in roundabouts. Councillor White. All in favor? And now Public Works update. Is there anything you'd like to?
Yep, thank you. I'll go through just some of the highlights. So of course we have our gravel program that's completed for this year, and follow that with our calcium program on all the unpaved roads. So that is now complete, which of course helps with dust control. The other highlight I'd like to point out, so our Public Works facility and salt shed and wash bay project. So we have had a preliminary meeting, and we've been I've been in contact with our staff to get their feedback on facility layout. And then on May 31st, we're going to a local facility to look at exactly what we could possibly be getting. So we're going to go for a little field visit, and that's May 31st. The other highlights I'd like to point out, we've got 2 projects out for tender, Site 15 and 16. So that's out right now, and that closes May 31st. And we had Site 45 closed today, but unfortunately we don't have the results on hand for any type of approval. And then we have an update on the pedestrian crossover, receiving the lighting. There's just been delays on the bolt anchor posts. So we're waiting on posts, and then they can start the project. So
I have a couple questions on the cross lights. Are there going to be flashing lights, buttons you can push?
yes, they are.
Yeah. Good.
Zion line repairs. Can you touch us a little bit on what you're going to do to that road, please?
Yes, so that'll be resurfacing. So there'll be new asphalt from London Line, and then it quits 500 meters west of Bethesda, and then as well as a section between First School and Underpass Road. So that's putting new hard surface down.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I also had, on the layout out there, do we know how we're gonna lay it out yet? Are you gonna try and separate the salt shed from the other building, or?
So we don't have an exact layout yet, but we're leaning towards salt shed, a standalone building, and a wash bay that'll be attached to the end of the public works garage. So we have the 6 bays existing. The 7th bay would become a wash bay that would look the same as a garage bay.
So you're putting the salt shed standalone. I like that a lot better. I like to keep the salt away from everything.
Yep.
Even if it's on the other side of the property, but.
Yep, that's the intent at this
That
point.
sounds good. Any other questions for Andrew?
I received a call today, Andrew, from the county, I think you forwarded it to it, about the state of Quaker Road from Egremont to the 402. It was impassable with a 4-wheel drive. Now it's a little better now. The county, this gentleman told me he's going to get their graders out and level it off and put a little bit of gravel down in the low spots. I guess my question is for council, is these roads that are no winter maintenance but are still open public roads, I think they're still classed as an F road. What is our minimum repair of this? The farmers are using these roads for their equipment. The county will be going back Quaker to that sign all the time. I just wonder, what should we have? What is our minimum state of repair for these type of roads to keep their classification?
I can't answer that. You, Andrew?
Yeah, they're still classified as an F, so they still have to be patrolled. And you have to make sure that they're safe for motorists. They're certainly not held to the same standard as other gravel roads that have people living at the end. So I guess Public Works would need direction if they wanted any type of improvement to them.
Most of these roads I would like to close. We really don't need them except for the farmer going up and down.
Yeah, because like some places, the fire department in some municipalities use it to get onto the 402, but we don't have that. So that one there happens to be the county where they've got their sign. So it's got to be kept open. But I think we need to have a minimum standard that at least it's you can go through it. Like you shouldn't have to be in 4-wheel drive and hardly make it to go through one of our township's roads. And it's not Andrew's fault. It's not the county's fault. This road was ruined when they put the gas line in. They dumped the mud back on the road. And it's never been brought up but it needs to be dealt with. I'm afraid somebody's going to bust an axle and it's going to be our fault.
We should probably put signs up there that the road's impassable.
Yeah, we can install some rough road signs. I think once we see the county restore the road, see what kind of condition it's in, and we can keep a close eye on it. Now that we know that there will be more traffic with the county sign, we'll make sure that the road is kept up to an acceptable standard.
As long as it's passable for traffic, then I have no problem. It doesn't have to be up to our normal road standards, but I think it needs to be passable. And take the grader down once in a while. It doesn't need calcium or anything like that, but I think we need to have a routine trip with the grader up and down it. The graders aren't that busy because all the calcium's on. So
are there any other questions for Andrew? I guess we need a motion to accept this report. Mayor Roundabouts? Councillor White? All in favor? And I guess that's about it, isn't it? Motion to Councillor Morris? Mayor Roundabouts? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.